Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
Still, and it's still September 12th.
Still
6
is,
o'clock.
yeah.
Yep.
So we can talk a little bit more about some of the political
the
stuff.
highlights of the City Council
here.
meeting. Yeah.
Probably a few things just to mention just off the bat, though. Tiny little thing. I saw yet another
What?
Press release from the city this afternoon saying
About
that the Vale Court project is still in limbo.
Oh, that's a shame.
The judge is still giving both sides time to hash it out and whatever. So
it's going to be winter.
I don't know. So anyway, so don't go waiting there if you want to watch the
And that's going to be affordable housing too, all of it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Ultimately, I still feel it's that the previous owner still wants more compensation, but that's just my point of view.
$3 million? I don't know. Could have gotten more, but
yeah.
Hey.
Another thing is sort of a checkered kind of thing too is that on Sunday they had the Cambridge Carnival, which is always sort of exciting, but occasionally marred with violence.
Yeah, I thought it was last year, but I guess it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago
there were shootings, but they've had multiple incidents over the years.
Yeah.
So I was biking up and down the length of it. The truth of the matter is that the Carnival, even though they had it like all of that, it's laces its way from Blackstone Street and
the parade goes up River Street.
The parade goes down through Central Square, works its way down
but
to
it all stopped over Lafayette Square.
And that's how we've been doing it the last bunch of years. So it stops down, not at Lafayette, but it passes through and then goes down to
but they had literally stopped at Lafayette, and I asked the policeman, because I was trying to cross the street, I said, isn't it supposed to be down there? He said, they have till 3 o'clock. And it was like 5 to 3.
They move at about on 1 nanometer per... No,
they were all there. It was just jammed up.
Incredibly slow.
Whatever.
You stop, you go 3 feet, you shake your booty, you move on.
But this wasn't moving. They were just moving.
So anyway, it ended with violence. There were shootings, not only at the Carnival, and the police just shut it down. And then some of the participants apparently came up around Central Square, and there were more shootings. So
was it connected though? Because that was over at River Street.
It was connected.
It was,
and it was not connected to the other shootings that had happened last week.
Yeah,
not connected. So
it's bad.
I think maybe it's time to reconsider Carnival, but that's my opinion.
At least in that location.
The Boston event is still perfectly great, and people can go to that.
Yeah.
But this is sort of failing. The other thing too is that if you actually were to take the floats and all the participants, whatever, and just put them actually together, it's a block long. It's not that long. It's just not that many participants in the parade. Other than that, they just go down toward Main Street with some vendors.
More of an open space rather than Kendall. Just seems so out of place for it.
Anyway, I think it's time to rethink the Carnival.
Okay.
So anyway, so a little bit more on last night up at Sullivan Chamber, City Council. So we talked about how the proposed ballot question on public financing and municipal election campaigns kind of got redirected to something else. We did a little bit on Volpe. This group of it's a misnomer. Some people are referring to it as the Graduate Student Housing Petition. Which suggests that it's basically initiated by the graduate students at MIT.
7,000 of them.
Right. There were some who were involved in it, but there were political candidates and other people from other parts of the city.
On the petition, not the people that spoke last night. They were all seemed to be living.
So basically, what they want to do is require the MIT to build 1,800 units of graduate student housing as a precondition for.
Oh, do they actually have a number? Because I know it's 1,800 for that site.
Honestly, that was the big problem for me, because you could make a case, well, that's the right number, but you should never prescribe the number in a zoning code like that and say, you will build 1,800 units of housing.
Because this is basically a zoning, but the MIT wants is a zoning
right. I mean, zoning is really you determine heights, density, whatever. You don't sort of mandate this is how many units you will do.
Now, they say they provide 38% graduate housing. Is that right?
All right. So I was a graduate student at MIT years ago. Back then, nobody I knew wanted to live on campus.
No, they still don't.
You went looking around.
By the way, I've looked at the cost because I have rented in the past to academic students, and it was actually more than.
It's not the best
cheap.
deal.
It's like $950, $1,000 to share.
Right.
So that's no different than sharing an apartment.
Pointed out, because he would rent apartments.
Yeah.
And there would be 3 or 4 graduate students in there, and their per person cost was a better deal.
Exactly.
Plus, you could live in a different place, so you weren't living where you work all the time.
In some of those places, you had to provide. Well, you have to provide, but you had whatever. The point is, if people think it's going to be really cheap housing, it's a mistake.
Right.
So
things
cost money.
Now, the truth is maybe ultimately, and personally, I think ultimately MIT should build a lot more housing. For
graduate students, because apparently there isn't enough, right?
And I don't think anybody disagrees, and I think MIT agrees fully.
Right.
Right? There's a question of how and when, and whether the propriety of having this being encoded into zoning.
Right, and in that particular,
which is nuts. There are ideas about building graduate student housing up on what they call the Northwest Campus, sort of.
Where's that?
That's up along Albany Street and Vassar Street, but
they have some
the western part of campus, north of the railroad tracks.
Okay.
And there will be more to come.
Yeah.
When is a big question. Hopefully by October 13th, when there's an advisory comes out.
I could see them coming back and saying, okay, wait, this 1,800, it's going to be affordable housing, because that's the whole thing. It's some of it can be for affordable for
No,
people.
for Volpe, that's set.
That cannot be changed?
They will have a mandate about how much housing they must build there.
Yeah, but they
that's
could put
totally
100.
Separate.
They could put 100 units in there for graduates, couldn't they, if they wanted to?
I suppose they could do it, yeah.
I'm just saying it's not beyond the question.
But I think if this is supposed to be made for affordable housing that's open to the public, I think if they simply built a lot of graduate student housing in Volpe, there'd be a lot of people who are not.
Oh no, they don't want to do that. But I could see where they could do 100 maybe family-oriented grad. I don't know what their thing is on.
They could certainly do some of that in there, and I think
fill that
some
need,
sense.
plus do the inclusionary, and maybe have less.
So what they're building right now, I was down there today in the construction site, eventually they're going to take down Eastgate, which is graduate student and family housing.
Oh, they are going to take that down?
That's going to go down, but only after more housing units for graduate students and family housing are built, adjacent to the T station.
So they are planning to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little complicated here because what has happened in the interim is MIT campus has actually lost some of the undergraduate housing, Bexley Hall, because it was ready to fall down. It was structurally
unfair. They've also built all along Vassar.
They've built along others, so the question is at what pace? Yeah. So I think you can make a good case that MIT needs to step up their game. They need to provide more housing, not just for graduate students, which was another reason why this petition is ludicrous. It should be for graduate students. There should be additional swing space for undergraduate housing, and there should be some housing opportunities for people who are coming to MIT to visit, as either the postdoc world. Yeah,
but there's a lot of off-campus housing places for people like that. That's there's a lot.
There's definitely some.
So the people that prefer renting out to an MIT family coming for 3 months and they're instead of Airbnb.
But I was talking to MIT faculty who were actually sort of saying they
need places, because I know Harvard provides places.
Right. Yeah. But they feel there's still a deficiency. Now I'm not talking about they don't need to build thousands of units of that, but they do need some. Right. So there's some needs, and honestly, MIT needs to step up their game in terms of developing and making a community on the Mass Ave corridor and the vicinity of where the railroad tracks are. There's a lot of empty, kind of crappy lots.
But don't they provide a lot of undergraduate housing, though? Don't most undergraduates live in dorms and stuff?
I think we're right.
It's pretty high.
They're kind of...
They're required to live in a dorm for a while, no?
Some living in frats and whatnot, and when you get to be a sophomore and a junior, you may live off campus, and a lot do, but maybe they would. Some of them would like to live on campus. So there's an absolute variety. There are some questions that need to be answered here. MIT needs to step up their game, but ultimately, the way this ought to play out is that when they're voting on Volpe, it should be on Volpe. Yeah. And there should be maybe what we call a memorandum of understanding, where in which case MIT lays out what their plan over the next 2, 4, 5, 10 years is. Which I think is
what they're working on.
I think that's what they're working at. And if this so-called graduate student housing petition serves any function at all to give a little more leverage on that, well, okay, fine. Yeah. But as a standalone petition, honestly, it just isn't really right. So those are some of the big things that happened last night. Actually, one thing related to the Carnival is that Denise Simmons has actually been pushing to have a Central Square Police Substation. I think it was originally called an outpost, and they amended that. You know, because there's some concern, but certainly I know a lot of people that talk to Denise, you know, who have some real concerns. And so apparently the new police commissioner, Bard, is apparently they're having a public meeting, and they're planning to have what they call a mobile police station, which is probably more like a van or something that they move in, and it'll be right where the CVS is in Central Square.
In front of a bike lane? Or in front of a...
Probably maybe up on the sidewalk. I don't even know.
Oh, I didn't think you could do that.
Well, there's some space there. So anyway, there'll be some enhanced police protection.
It's too bad, you know, that space that you've referred to that always doesn't have anything in it, right?
Right there in the Carnival Plaza.
Yeah, what's that about?
The right solution for police presence should be a multi-service facility, public bathroom, MBTA, dispatching location.
There's never anything in there.
I don't know. Honestly,
it's privately owned.
We got to do better. We definitely got to do better. So anyway, so those are some of the main things that kind of popped up during the council meeting last night. I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of really sort of big pressing ones, but no. if they come to mind, then they'll come to mind. Another thing that would happen now that we're into September and October of a municipal election year is also the time when most of the pretty much all of the candidate forums happen.
Yep. Now, there was one last week that you went to. I couldn't go. But,
so last Thursday.
Right, Ward 6?
It was the Ward 6 Democratic City Committee, Ward Committee.
Or district for the city councilor.
Had one. Now, to be perfectly honest, doing that forum is as much about the Ward 6 Committee trying to be a player as it is anything else. But it is a public service, and it was the first opportunity for some of us to just sort of see not all of the candidates, but a very large number of the candidates in one place.
So how was it run? I mean, was it moderated by
Leslie Phillips, who's not without an agenda. Yeah. She is affiliated with the Our Revolution group, and she took every possible opportunity to brand candidates as they were speaking.
Really?
Whether that sounds like something Bernie Sanders would say.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that was not great. But there was 18 of them. And plus two who could not be there because of other commitments. Okay. Councilors Devereaux and whomever. And Mayor Simmons, who actually had to be someplace else at the time.
Okay, so then 6 did not go.
And then there were 6 who didn't go, right?
All right.
And honestly, I don't really blame them. There's some people who actually could derive some benefit from some of these things, and then there are other candidates who will actually derive no benefit from these. But,
what stood out for you? Anything?
Definitely, there were some things that kind of...
Especially the newer people. I mean, I don't know. I've never heard some of these people speak at all.
Yeah. All right. So
what do you have here?
So I'm not going to run through their names. You can look them up. Right. But there were 18 who were there, and 8 who were not.
I'm looking over his notes here.
Right.
So the check mark is the ones that were there.
Yes. Okay. And 8 who were not. So some of the things that I know, I didn't write down exhaustive notes because honestly, I had to, the forum started at 6. It was supposed to go to like 8:30, and I had to be in front of a lecture hall teaching at 7:30. So I had to.
Yeah, right.
So I was there for the first, hour and 15 minutes, right, which was enough to get a taste of everything. All right. So Harry Pillai was very, emphasizing how he was a Sanders delegate, so again appealing on that theme. Olivia D'Ambrosio was very much sort of being theatrical because she's a theater arts person. I think she seems pretty accomplished in terms of being dramatic, so I think that kind of stood out for me. Good delivery, honestly didn't seem expert on much of anything, but maybe has an appeal. Quentin Zondervan, again in the Sanders theme here, wanted to emphasize he considers himself a democratic socialist like Bernie. Okay. Right? So some are trying to play to that. Yeah. More to say on that topic in a minute. Nadia Akamoto, who's the 19-year-old Harvard student, you literally just says, "I'm running as a young person." I thought, that's not really...
Yeah, that's not a good thing. Yeah.
Jeff Santos emphasized his association because he runs a radio show called, I think, Revolution Boston or something like that.
Is it an FM, AM? Do you know?
I don't know. It's sort of an independent station.
Okay.
But so he's a candidate, and
he's also Sanders, huh?
Well, when asked to sort of define your political philosophy, he kind of likened his appeal to Bernie Sanders and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Right? Gwen Vollmar used the word, describe herself as a collectivist.
Whatever that means.
I don't know what that means, but I'm starting to get a sort of a theme here.
Yeah.
Right? I'll skip some of these guys here. Something I actually find kind of funny is, so Mark McGovern, who's trying to sort of sort of verify his progressive credentials.
Yeah.
So he says, after saying how he's he's a social worker, he sees himself as a collaborative progressive. Okay. Meaning, and he quote correctly,
he works well with others.
That he files orders with people all across the board. He's not just part of one camp.
He's part of everything.
So I thought he said that well.
Yeah.
He tried to emphasize his collaborative nature.
Right.
Collaborative.
Which really should be a positive thing, but some people might see as, well, you're just trying to cover all the bases.
Right, maybe. Yeah.
But I do think it is true. He really does reach out.
And then Richard Harding was next, and he says, I consider myself an aggressive progressive.
Oh, dear.
Which had a nice little rhyme to it. A lot of people are
progressive. Oh, I like that.
And then he explained, and he basically said, a lot of people will talk about income inequality, like, oh, that's a really pressing issue, or about affordability, but don't necessarily have the wherewithal to do anything about it or a plan. I'm not so sure yet that he does or doesn't, but the thing is that it's kind of like when Dennis Benzo was on the council. He made it a high priority to emphasize jobs and job opportunities and whatever. And that's all you can really ask of a new candidate. Anything is will you pursue things? Hopefully you'll be good at it, but I like that idea. I'm an aggressive progressive, right?
Okay.
Progressive being the least well-defined word in the city of Cambridge. So that was kind of interesting how that played out.
Yeah.
Now, something that's sort of related to this, but also related to the politics in general is, we've talked in this program before about this year there's this proliferation of groups who are just dying to endorse people, right? And they say, fill out this questionnaire with 82,
well,
82.
Not all of them, just a few of them did that.
Right. But that's definitely been sort of part of the, part of just the way of things this year. I was looking for, here's my sheet here. All right, so one particular group, Our Revolution Cambridge, which I'm a little mystified by, I have to be honest.
I did find their Facebook page, because when I read on Mark's campaign, his things that he attended this forum and said, oh, how did I miss that forum? But I guess I wasn't in the know.
So as best as I can tell, this is sort of some of the leftovers of what we're going to call the Progressive Democrats of Cambridge, right? Plus some people who are newfound Bernie Sanders supporters.
But it does have some Cass, I think Hillary type people from Cass that are in that, no?
I don't know. I hope they are, because I don't want to see it just become sort of like the Sanders offshoot.
She is still alive, folks. She does have something to say.
She's doing great.
Yeah.
She's doing great, actually. I'm thinking about buying her book.
Yeah. I mean, really. Go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Right. But the Our Revolution group, they were kind of a mystery to me, and that's still a little bit of a mystery to me. So they put out this 82 questionnaire to candidates. 15 out of 26 city council candidates returned it, which is not the same as seeking endorsement, by the way. It just means I'm doing you the courtesy of returning your questionnaire.
Some did not purposely
and some did not, because honestly, they knew damn well that they were not going to get the blessing of this group. Or they just
didn't,
I mean, this is a group that's probably kind of left of Lenin, right? and so, so why bother, right? Okay, so 15 sent in. So they did something based on the questionnaire. They kind of ran a sieve of some form and decided that there were 8 who had crossed the magical threshold and were worthy of being invited back to a little forum that they did sort of semi-privately, but it was open to the public last Saturday.
At the Democracy Center, right?
Up at 45 Mount Auburn,
at 10 a.m. on Saturday.
There was actually a webcast. You could actually watch some of it, so I watched a little bit of it.
So is it on the web, like the forum itself? Can you see?
I don't know.
I'll have to look at
I just saw some of it while it was happening.
Live streaming. Maybe it was Facebook Live.
So there's one of the 8 lucky contestants was in New York City. Couldn't be there, but there was 7 who were there, and it was a pretty small crowd. Honestly, there weren't that many people there, but they went through the thing, and then I think they must have also asked some of their member list to vote online. Apparently, a total of 50 which honestly, if you got a membership list that's very big, and you only get 50 participating, that's not that thrilling. But they apparently have settled on their blessed 5.
Okay. Oh, they did. So they only were going to do 5?
Right. So their blessed 5 are, not surprisingly, Dennis Carlone and Jan Devereaux, right?
That's pretty good, though. I mean,
no, they've got their bona fides. That's okay. And I wouldn't call them necessarily left of Lenin for those guys.
No, I would vote.
So they would sort of, meet the questionnaire tests and all of that. There was also, here they are. Those 2. Sumbul Siddiqui. I guess that doesn't surprise me. Vatsidi Sivanti, right? And Quentin Zondervan.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
Right.
So who got left out?
Well,
Jeff Santos?
Well, see, now that's the thing I find interesting is that at the Ward 6 Committee forum, Jeff Santos made clear, he's actually had Bernie Sanders on his show before.
Yeah.
So he kind of knows him personally. He's had him on repeatedly over the years. He got stiffed. He got stiff, which I found kind of interesting.
No, we don't know what he said.
And there was also another thing which I saw on their Facebook. I think it was their Facebook page.
Mark didn't get it.
Mark McGovern was bounced, which I knew that was going to happen because he wasn't part of the gang. No,
he wasn't there.
But the thing is apparently they were saying how they now have to, they're going to send their recommendations up to national.
National? What do you mean? What's national?
Well, our revolution is like a national chain, and this is just a franchise. And so it made it, the way I read it, it made it look as though they said, well, we have to go get the approval of the national before we can announce our endorsed candidates locally here.
Well,
this is a local election, folks. Get with the program. If you've got to get approval from somebody at the national level in order to be okay with your endorsements, then you really got to think.
Well, let's see if that really does follow through.
I don't know.
I mean, it may be just they wanted to say, look, we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. So,
Well, apparently this group is not that big a deal. But we'll kind of see how it plays out.
It's happening around the country. That's why a lot of people are running for local offices, so you can't really put it down.
That's true.
That's why a lot of these people are out there.
No, there's some really good efforts going on to try and drum up candidates to run for office.
So, I mean, I think if it brings people out...
That's not this process.
Maybe not. But,
I don't think they brought any candidates out. I think they're just trying to bless the ones who are there.
Well, they came out after. I don't know if they didn't bring any candidates. I mean, I think Bernie Sanders did bring candidates out. His whole.
I think the whole
November did bring things out. It brought women out.
Yeah.
It did bring a lot of. You can't discount Mike Connolly's victory.
No, that was very much tied to a Sanders sort of
and there is that kind of he just came out with a book, Bernie. He was on Volpe Petition the other day.
No, it's a factor here. But over the many years, it is always true. If you have, I think the voter turnout is going to tick up a bit. Maybe we'll have 20,000 people voting.
If they can vote right. I mean, I don't know. It's still kind of hard to.
No, it's not easy. It's easy as pie to vote a ranked choice ballot, right?
All right.
You're not gonna. Maybe you might have a hard time understanding how it's tabulated.
Sure.
Voting is easy. It's my first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice.
Yeah.
If you can go to a restaurant and order, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, but over the years, and this is one of the roles that the Cambridge Civic Association played forever, which was there were a lot of voters who really didn't know, and they didn't have time or interest to go and find out. So getting advice from an entity helped.
Which is what we all do.
But I have an issue with this idea of if an entity simply thrusts itself in without any background, without any connection, and nobody even knows who they are. I don't know that people should be paying attention.
Well, that's up to those people paying attention or not.
Right.
So.
I mean, at this point here, I think we can say that the group A Better Cambridge has been around for 4-something years. Mm-hmm. The Cambridge Residents Alliance have been around for 4 or 5 years. That's not a very long time. But I think that they
and they're people that live. The names. I don't know any names associated with our revolution, but that's me.
But the thing is, so basically you're trying to tack off of the wins of the Sanders thing in order to sort of sell yourself. But honestly, I think you'd probably be better advised just to sort of talk to all the people you know who've actually bothered to find out, and read the candidate pages and try doing it yourself.
Oh, I think people will do that.
Oh, I mean, they always do, but
and go to the forums. They're all listed. You go to Robert's site under candidates events. You'll see them all listed.
That's right.
The city. I don't know if the city has it. Who else would have it?
I'm not sure, but I've already people sort of putting the calendar around in other listservs and what have you.
Good. Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of robust discussion.
Is there any?
My personal favorites for these forums is
the Mid-Cambridge.
The Mid-Cambridge one, which I didn't write down the date, but I think it's like October.
I have it in my phone.
Maybe 19th or 12th, or maybe it's October 12th. And then there's a week later, it's the Porter Square Neighbors Association, does one up at Leslie College. In my view, those have been the best ones and also the best attended ones. So if you're a candidate and you feel like blowing off a forum, don't blow off those ones.
Wednesday, October 11th is the Mid-Cambridge.
Okay, so Wednesday. All right, okay, that's fine.
And then what did you say? The 19th.
And I think it's a week later, which would be the 18th.
Wednesday the 18th is the Porter Square.
The Porter Square one up at Leslie.
Okay,
but
and then
but there are other ones. CEOC.
Unfortunately, there's a school committee forum the same night. I noticed that on your thing. I don't know why they schedule it that way.
Because one is for city council, one is for school committee, so it's not a conflict for the candidates. But if you're interested in both races,
it is. Yeah, well,
it's
hopefully,
a little bit of a problem.
Do they videotape the Porter Square? I know CCTV
they do videotape
is doing
Porter
one
Square.
of them. CCTV is doing, I think, the
they actually did the Ward 6 one.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Available.
They're doing,
And I think they'll do it with the school committee as well.
Yeah.
But I would strongly, again, just push the Mid-Cambridge one because I think they do a great job.
Yeah.
And you actually get to talk to the candidates as part of the format. You actually sit down at tables with the candidates. You can actually get to know who they are, and you can get to see which ones
they
are
stay and you move around, right?
You move around.
It's organized by issue.
It's really
environment.
It's really the right way to do it. Yeah. So anyway, so look out for that.
Wow, time is flying by.
Yeah. So anyway, we're just about out of time. So I guess we'll see you next week on Cambridge Inside Out.